Oh my God, I just had the hardest workout of my life. All right, it's time to play some video games. Let's start recovering. Hey guys, let's talk about exercising. And specifically, let's talk about the way you recover after you work out or after you do some sort of run. You know, a lot of us focus on the way that we actually work out, the way to improve our performance, the way to improve our workouts so that we can hit our new PRs, right? But a lot of us do not focus on the recovery aspect. But you know, that part is really important. Making sure we recover properly after a workout will go a long way. And that way is not just in terms of our peak performance, but also our overall health. So today I'm going to talk to you about one specific muscle, and it's located right here. No, it's not your abs, it's your diaphragm. And I'm going to talk about how you can use your diaphragm to recover properly after a workout. So what do we know about exercise? Well, we know that exercise is good for us, right? People who work out versus people who don't work out, generally people who work out are healthier. But another thing that exercising does is that it increases the cortisol levels in our body. So what is cortisol? Well, cortisol is basically our primary stress hormone. This is a hormone that's released, for example, when we wake up and we see sunlight, and it helps our body wake up. This is the same hormone that is released when we're exercising. Now you might hear stress and might think like, oh my God, I don't want to be stressed out. Well, you know, some stress is good because this cortisol puts us in this fight or flight mode, and this is the mode that we're going to be in anytime we're working out. Well, one thing that we know that cortisol does is that it fights off antioxidants. And what we know that antioxidants do is that they fight off oxidation. That's why they're called antioxidants. And this oxidation can release these free radicals in our body, and these free radicals are what can damage a lot of our cells and cause a lot of other health problems. And if we constantly have this oxidation going on, or if we constantly have this chronic oxidative stress, we're more likely to have heart disease, rheumatoid arthritis, we're more likely to have hypertension, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and we're also more likely to have atherosclerosis, and we're more likely to age earlier. So this can all happen if we have too much cortisol for too long in our body. And again, it fights off the antioxidants. So it fights off the thing that can prevent all these diseases. Well, one antioxidant that we get in our body is melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone that we get when it's time to go to sleep, and when we see nighttime outside, that's the hormone that's released. And you know, I'm not gonna say we should completely get rid of one hormone or the other, because we need to have this balance of hormones in our body. And we need to have a balance of cortisol, we need to have a balance of melatonin, because at some point we're gonna need that cortisol in our body, but at some point we're also gonna need that melatonin. It's something that I like to call homeostasis. So again, I'm not saying that exercising is bad, right? Just because it releases this cortisol and it can cause these things, if done in moderation, and if our cortisol levels are naturally controlled and we're in this homeostasis, then there's no problem, right? But what about someone who is already always stressed out? And you might be thinking I'm talking about you, when in reality, a lot of people are always stressed out. Well, if you're already stressed out all the time, your cortisol levels are already out of balance. They're already out of whack. Now, on top of that, if you go to the gym and you exercise super intensely, which, you know, most of us think is good for you, but instead of actually helping us, that can actually throw our cortisol levels out of whack even more and keep it that way. Or for example, let's say you exercise at the end of the day. Now again, the end of the day is nighttime, that's when we're about to go to sleep, that's when our melatonin comes out. It's our sleep hormone. But instead of going to sleep, now you're working out and now you're releasing more cortisol. And what does cortisol do? It fights off that melatonin and it keeps that stress response in our body. That's another way we can throw our cycle off. Because basically what it's doing is your body is supposed to go to sleep, but you're working out and your cortisol is telling your body to stay awake. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna throw off your circadian rhythm. Now your circadian rhythm is basically our body's internal clock. And this is the clock that tells us when it's time to wake up, and this is the same clock that tells us when it's time to go to sleep. Now, instead of going to sleep, you're gonna have this stress in your body, and you're gonna have excess levels of cortisol. This is why it's usually better to work out in the morning or during the daytime so that you can help keep your cortisol and melatonin levels in check. So in case you're getting the gist here, the goal is to keep everything in check, right? You don't want to have too much of anything, because too much of anything, even if it's a good thing, is bad, right? Unless we're talking about money. Just kidding. So now let's go back to using our diaphragm here. So just using our diaphragm here can actually go a long way in lowering our cortisol levels after a workout and also lowering our oxidative stress and preventing all that cascade of diseases that we can get. So this is actually based on a study, but that study is actually based on research. And the research is saying that if you are breathing using your diaphragm, that you are putting your body in this rest and relax response. Now, if we just talk about our breathing for a second. Now, if we are working out, what are we doing? We're breathing a lot, right? Because we are doing this intense workout and we're breathing way more intensely than someone who is just sitting at home and relaxed. Now, a lot of people, when they work out, they end up using their mouth. And what they're doing is they're basically hyperventilating, right? They're taking in way more oxygen, but they're also releasing a lot of carbon dioxide. Now, if we want to talk about just proper ways of breathing while you're working out and how you can improve your exercise efficiency, well, I'm putting a link to that video in the description below. So make sure you check that out too. But basically, when you breathe using your diaphragm, you are using your whole lungs capacity. And the reason is you have this diaphragm that rests right underneath your lungs. And this is really the way you should be breathing all the time. But the way you can check if you use your diaphragm or not is when you're breathing, you feel your belly and you feel if it's sticking out or not. If you take a deep breath and you feel like your belly sticks in, you're not breathing correctly because you're not using your diaphragm. Your belly actually should be sticking out. That's how you know that you're using your diaphragm. And what that does is it makes sure that your lungs' full capacity is being used. So one thing that does alone is it makes your breathing a lot more efficient because now air is getting into the entire bag of your lungs instead of just the top upper half of your lungs. But a lot of us, when we work out, we're just using the upper half of our lungs to breathe. Now, when we're just using the upper half of our lungs, it's putting our body more in that fight or flight response. Now, again, from biology class or psychology class, you remember that your fight or flight response is called your sympathetic nervous system. Now, when you're in this response, again, you're releasing cortisol. And that is a hormone that releases this whole cascade of reactions that leads to the stress response in your body. But also, when you're doing an intense workout, you're breathing really quickly, right? You're using the upper half of your lungs and you're taking these shallow, quicker breaths. And when you do that, you're taking in a lot more oxygen into your body. And when all that excess buildup of oxygen is in your body, it can contribute even more to that oxidation that we were talking about. And again, it can contribute more to that oxidative stress. So now let's imagine someone who's always stressed out and they're working out at the end of the day and they're doing this super intense workout and they were breathing through their mouth their whole time. They're using the upper half of their chest the whole time. And now they're getting this huge cortisol response in their body, and they have this excess abundance of oxygen in their body, and they're causing all this oxidative stress. Again, just one time, probably won't be that much of an issue, but for people who are always in that stressed out response, it could turn into an issue where you have this chronic stress in your body. Well, this is where using your diaphragm can really come into play. And if we're just talking about a way to recover after you're working out, anyone can do this, and it's super simple. So back to this study, they had these participants that were doing this intense workout. And after the intense exercise, they split the group in two. And half of the group went and they did this sort of meditation where they focus on their breathing and they focus on just using their diaphragm on breathing for about an hour. The other half was the control group, and they just did whatever they normally do after the workout. And what they found was the group that focused on breathing with their diaphragm actually had lower cortisol levels, but higher melatonin levels. And if you remember from before, cortisol is a thing that fights off antioxidants, and melatonin actually is an antioxidant. So the people in that group were way less likely to have oxidative stress and all these other issues that can happen after an intense workout. And this kind of makes sense if you just look at the biology of it, right? Because if you're using your diaphragm, you're using your whole lungs capacity. Again, going back to biology class, when you're using your whole lungs capacity and you're using the bottom half of your lungs as well, that engages a parasympathetic response in your body. Or in other words, your body's rest and relax mode. And that makes sense because now your body's going to be releasing more melatonin and telling your body to calm down and getting rid of that cortisol and telling your body again to calm down. So I'm not saying you have to go get into meditation or anything like that, but I do think that if you start focusing on your breathing and you start focusing on using your diaphragm more, that one, you can start getting a lot more air into your lungs and you can start breathing a lot more efficiently, but also you can help control your cortisol levels, you can help prevent a lot of this oxidative stress, and you can prevent a lot of damage that can happen to your cells over a period of time. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked that video, and if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel below. I will see you in the next video.